if we don't corral the cost of health care, whether under Medicare or under private insurance, it's going to drive this country down into the ditch where we'll never escape. And so what we have to do is figure out how we can keep the costs that are charged to you, ultimately, for health care based on what is really being provided to you. Medicare continues to go up in cost. It actually goes up in cost slower than the cost of private health insurance is going up. In other words, it's a better deal price-wise than is private insurance by almost a factor of 2. Now, the difficulty is this. Medicare doesn't determine the price of all health care. And so with the private sector, families are paying today on average about $14,000 for a family insurance policy. An individual probably somewhere between $5,000 to $7,000 for a health insurance policy. We've got to figure out how to make it so it's more productive so that if you need health care, you'll get it at a reasonable price. But if you're not using it, you're not paying so much. And so there's where we have to really focus the attention. But to tell someone on Social Security that we're going to cut their benefits because we have to balance the budget, to me, is not only wrong-headed, it's aimed at the wrong direction, because Social Security and seniors who are receiving Social Security had nothing to do with these massive deficits that were created in the last 10 years. And so for anyone to try to attack Social Security or to change its character and move the monies that were put in there by taxpayers over the decades would be, I believe, wrong and un-American. And so that I will fight tooth and nail, because for that woman who is on a fixed income, if all of a sudden we tell her that the money to help pay for her benefits has been taken out so that we can create private accounts for folks who are still paying into the system, that would be unfair to her, because she paid in for decades while she was working. And we have to make sure that we keep the covenant that we reached with Americans over the decades, and that we will have with Americans over the future decades. Because I can tell you this, a lot of companies, Lehman Brothers and others, are no longer in existence. Enron and others. Social Security, and we don't want this, but it could run on autopilot for close to another 30 years and pay out benefits at 100% because of the money that is in reserves that has been paid by you and I for decades into the system. And so while we don't want to do that because we want to make it solvent for many more decades after that, what we want to make sure we're doing is making sure that we make Social Security the prize that it has become for people who are getting ready to reach their retirement years. And so that, I can guarantee you, as your member of Congress, I will defend Social Security and promote it to make it an even more productive program for those who reach their retirement years.
Thank you, Congressman. There is absolutely no doubt that we need to keep the promises to those people that we've made our promises to, that they need to be taken care of. It is unfair and it's wrong unless we don't. I am trapped here by the court. You lassoed me, oh my goodness. When Social Security was first established by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it was called the Social Security Trust. And the money was in fact set aside and held for the benefit of the beneficiaries. It was not put there to be the sole source of their retirement income there. It was be there as a stopgap and help them through tougher times. At the time, there was nearly 40 people working for every beneficiary. At the time, once benefits came into effect, the life expectancy of the beneficiary was only 40 years. Through the miracle of modern medicine and the help of such things as Medicare, we're now seeing people who are retiring at 65 often living to 80, 82, 83 and longer. So the dynamic has changed. Under Lyndon Johnson, the idea of the trust was dissolved and became part of the access to the general budget, and a lot of the money has come out of other areas. I happen to feel that we do need to do a transition and make sure that money is, without exception, held for those who it's being put aside for. I actually, in disagreement with Xavier, I actually like the idea that President Bush put into effect, where a certain percentage, and it was a small percentage, would be set aside for the individual, especially when you understand when you're first coming into the workplace. We're not talking about people past 50 or people past 30, but when you first begin, a small percentage just starts being invested and held for yourself and cannot be touched.
Except for Wall Street touching it.
Why does it have to be Wall Street? That it doesn't have to be Wall Street. It could be any number of things. It could be an annuity product. It could be a bank product.
I need Wall Street.
Yeah. An insurance product is still being held in your house. A bank product is being held. Put it under the mattress. No, not really. Is Wall Street really that bad? If we look at the history over time of Wall Street, the return on investment has been far better than a bank. It increases on average 10% every 20 years. We're going through a tough time now, but if history follows, 20 years from now we'll be saying, boy, we did a good thing when we made some investments now. That is just history and that's just business. So I admit that we do have a fundamental disagreement there. I would like to see people be more self-reliant and less dependent upon the government.
That will be the final question, and then we will ask the candidates to look for closing remarks.
A couple minutes.
You're not going to have any more questions?
Come on, more questions.
Wait, you have more cards, don't you?
I've got 25 or 30. And People's Time advertised 10:30 was the 11:30.
Questions were fixed. Yeah, my question wasn't even asked. You didn't ask any.
Mine was the first question to be written. It was never asked, and my daughter's was the 13th.
I'm sorry.
No, you kind of. It smells in here, boy. I'm gonna tell you right now. It really smells.
Hey,
That's enough.
Hey, you.
It's not fair.
Hey, you, buddy. You. Hey, you.
please,
Don't say please what.
please have respect for everybody here.
Oh yeah,
and
please
sit
give
down,
me a
please.
break.
Oh, you were the first to yell out, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the first heckler.
How about everybody? Wall Street, Wall Street.
I call for peace.
Free pass, right? Free pass, right?
And actually, I think one of the remarkable things that we're finding here, yes, I believe in conservative values and conservative principles. I believe that the individual is more important than the state, and that the state needs to get out of our way and allow us to grow and be successful. I believe in Thomas Jefferson that the responsibility of our educational system is to give us the tools to manage our own affairs and those in our community. I believe in the principles of such people as Benjamin Franklin. When he saw there was a need for a hospital in Philadelphia, he went to the city council and says, what do I have to do? And they say, if you can raise the money, we'll stab it. What did he do? They went out and raised 100% of the money from the private sector to build that hospital. I'm not saying we can do that in all cases now, but that's the principles that we need to have. We don't want our people to be forever dependent children. We want to allow them to grow up and be free and be successful. That said, between the left side and the right side of the aisles, there is many places for compromise, and there's many places that we do, in fact, agree. And I am appalled, and I'm actually appalled at both sides, that we cannot come together and solve those problems in the areas that we do agree. And that some of those problems there's many parts of the healthcare that we do agree. There's many parts in terms of reinvigorating industry in the United States that we do agree. And I find both sides of the house shameful because they've been intransigent. And that's one area, if you can't already tell about me, then I'm willing to talk, I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to compromise on areas that's the benefit to all of us. But when it comes to choices of freedom and the Constitution, I will always look to our founders first. Thank you.
Let me first begin by saying to Stephen Smith, thank you for helping this be a very constructive conversation with constituents as we tried to go out there and do what for over 200 years I believe the founding fathers were hoping we would do. That is engage in civic and civil dialogue about who should run this country and where we should go. And so I think it's important to applaud the candidates who go out there and do it in a respectful way. So I want to say to Stephen Smith, thank you very much for making this a pleasure to be here and have this conversation, even though we don't always agree on the particular issues. Secondly, I want to say to Jim and Art and all those who made it possible for us to be here, thank you. It's not easy. And certainly, I think it's great that folks want us to stay longer and have more questions. Because quite honestly, there are too many parts of the country where you never get to see your member of Congress and never get to have that open dialogue with those who say they want to represent you. And so I think this is good. And I appreciate that you all took the time to make this possible for us to have this conversation. Ever since I've been in office, I have done exactly this. Many of you I know come to my town hall meetings, with my coffees with your congressman. In the last 2 years, in this session of Congress, I have reached out to probably around over 500,000 of you, whether directly, by mail, or by phone, to attend my coffees. Because there is no better way for you to have this engagement than to be able to come and speak directly to me. Especially if you don't agree with something I've done. It's better than writing me a letter or having to yell at the TV. And so I make every effort as often as I can to make myself available to you. And that's a commitment that I will keep again and again, because the reality is, this is the way it should be done. If I don't win an election, it should be because you all don't think I'm the best one. And if I win, I hope it's because you have faith that I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. We've gone through this whole process of explaining. I get one vote. It's a precious vote because it's a vote for 650,000 of you. And there are good things and there are bad things, but we have to make decisions with that one vote. And so when I say in my town hall meetings, I respect what you've done in giving me the privilege to be your member of Congress. Believe me, I mean it. Because I grew up in a family where we had very little access to anyone that was in a profession. I'm the first in my family to go on and get a college degree. I know the value of being able to move ahead. And so I want to give that opportunity to as many people as I can. Now, at the same time, I know that I have an obligation more than just voting for big policy issues. I'm proud, as I said before, that I voted against going to war in Iraq. I'm proud of the fact that I voted for historic health care legislation. I am proud of the fact that we made an investment through this economic recovery bill to make sure that we got ourselves out of this black hole that we were in, where we were nosediving into territory we've never seen before for 70 years since the Depression of the 30s. But at the same time, I know that my job is not just to cast that big vote. And that's why when we were able to help a family recently in Highland Park who had a $450,000 mortgage and they were underwater, and they were trying everything they could figure out to try to keep their home, including continue making payments, but they couldn't keep them at the new rate of that ballooning interest payment. And they were doing everything they could with Citibank to try to renegotiate that loan because they were willing to stay in a home and pay on a mortgage that was costing them more than the value of their home. But they were getting nowhere after months and were now in foreclosure and on the verge of seeing their home sold away from them by Citibank. We were able to help them. And today, they have the deed back. And they are now negotiating with Citibank to renegotiate the terms of their mortgage. Those are the things that I get to do that are perhaps more, for me, more gratifying than the big votes, because the reality is someone gets to stay at home today in America because you all gave me a privilege to represent all of you. And so I hope that what I could say is at the end of the day, when you agree with me or not, when you applaud or you hiss, that at the end of the day, you at least have a member of Congress who's accessible, who's willing to listen, and who tries to do the best he can with the one vote that 650,000 of you give me. And if I can do that, then I can feel very proud to be your member of Congress in Washington, D.C. And until that time, I will do the best I can to always be available and always try to do what I believe is right and reflects what you have been telling me. So I thank you very much for participating here, and I hope you will all make sure you vote by November the 2nd.